Hello everybody, welcome back to the adventures of Anton Rayne and Suzerain. We got a bunch of news. I don't really want to go through it, but we will. But before that, let's see what's going on with Arcasia, or I should say Edo specifically. Rehabilitation of Quinal, the balancing act of Edo. There's Quinal. They had a problem with Edo earlier, where they were thinking about leaving. Amidst growing tensions, the ATO, the Arcasian Treaty Organization, is engaged in a delicate balancing act with Quinal, a key member, showing signs of distancing itself from full membership to observer status. Central to this shift is a dispute resolution between Quinal and Arcasian PMCs, private military companies, which has fueled concerns over sovereignty rules-based order and autonomy for Quinal. Edo has responded to these concerns with a serious warning to the PMC CEOs and a series of concessions aimed at reaffirming Quinal's autonomous standing while retaining its essential alliance ties. The flexibility of Edo in addressing Quinal's concerns reflects the strategic importance of this member state and the alliance's commitment to balance member sovereignty with collective security interests. That is a stark difference from the Katana Security Pact, or CSP. Edo is trying to find common ground with members who disagree with them, where the CSP is trying to kind of pull everyone tighter. And what's going on in Wayland? Wayland operations, a mixed success. Wayland President Smolak is drawing his operations against the Bludish Freedom Front to a close. The consensus is that while Wayland's army went a long way towards neutralizing the Bludish threat, there were many preventable casualties. That's why I didn't want to be a part of that. Furthermore, despite Wayland's best efforts, not all hideouts have been eradicated, and anti-Smolak sentiment is at an all-time high amongst the remaining insurgents. Yeah, be mad at them. Don't be mad at us. We already have enough problem with terrorism in our country. On to the news, I guess? Casaro raises the Bludish question. Casaro Kibner, he's the leader of the ultra-right. He is a pain in the ass. He's proposing a law that would make it so Sordish is the only language accepted in educational institutions. Once again, he's trying to stomp out the Bloods in their language. If it gets to us, we'll have to try and veto it, probably. Dyer prepares for Day of Descension. What? The city of Dyer is busy preparing for the Day of Descension, an annual celebration of the founding of Nurity. Oh, a religious celebration. Though religion plays a smaller role in Sordish life, daily life, than in years past, the day still holds special importance for many Nuras, thousands of whom have already begun undertaking the pilgrimage to the tomb of Saint Dast. The cathedral, in which it is located, Dyer's Arch Sanctuary, is currently undergoing renovations set to be completed in time for the festivities. In accordance with presidential tradition, Anton Rayne will be making an appearance at the event. So we've got to go there. We've got to go to some, 4th of July type festival. Nationalize the Big Four now! As the debate about privatization versus nationalization intensifies in the capital, the Whole Sword Post firmly believes that President Rayne should come down on the side of nationalization for all the so-called Big Four companies, include the currently fully private Heart of Sordland and Bergia Steel. Full nationalization would prevent price gouging and prevent CEOs like Marcel Caranti, he owns the news media, from consolidating power. We're not going to do that. We believe in the free market. I don't want the government to start taking control of companies. Sordland Today says the opposite. Privatization, the future of Sordland. Don't let the pro-government elites fool you. Nationalization of Sordland's Big Four corporations would be a disaster for our country. Instead, we advocate for the privatization of state-owned enterprises, the dam mining and the Sordish State Corporation. Both companies have grown sluggish from lack of competition. Even private interests taking a minority stake could lead to greater innovation and a brighter future. Maybe we could sell those off and pay off our national debt. I mean, we don't need the government to own private corporations. Maybe. And in geopolitics? An ideological chess game in Rica. So it looks like the United Katana, the commies, are trying to win over people by buying their support. Oh man, what else we got going on here? We've got... Okay, something in Grooney and whole sort. We'll look at the thing in Groony. Economic report from Valgan. Valgan is suffering the effects of the economic recession, with unemployment spiking and many small businesses shuttering. The larger agricultural concerns are expected to announce a wave of layoffs as sales slow. But the economy's getting better. Look, it quit going down. It's getting better. What about in Whole Sword? Okay, we've got the bill by Casaro. We already know that about how he wants to get rid of non-Swordish languages in education. And the anti-corruption investigation? The anti-corruption police have completed preliminary investigations into Sordland's main oligarchs. Marcel Caranti, who we just saw, who runs the TV stations, who tried to bribe us once upon a time, and Walter Tusk, who tried to bribe us multiple times. No concrete proof of corruption or other wrongdoing has been revealed yet. How? Walter Tusk tried to bribe us multiple times, and Caranti tried to bribe us once. How have you not found anything on these crooks? Nia! Ooh, attending Victory Day. I'm sure nothing untoward will come here. President State Car rode to Jen. Surge drove us to the city of Jen. It's a city distinguished by a strongly nationalistic population, the stronghold of Swordish nationalists, for an event organized by the opposition parties to discuss current events. In reality, it is probably a publicity stunt to show Sordland that the leaders of the assembly could sit around the same table. The National Front Party, the ultra-righties, which govern the city, undoubtedly had the biggest hand in the organization of the meeting. It was not a coincidence that it fell on Victory Day. Today was the day of special symbolic importance for Sordland. Every year, on the 14th of March, proud patriots from all ages gathered to celebrate the end of the Swordish Civil War and Tarkin Soul's victory. Jen had survived one of the worst atrocities of the war, and its Victory Day celebrations were the most jubilant in all of Sordland. Originally, only Peter and I were scheduled to attend. But after learning about the new developments with the Ishvel Urson case, Nia Morgan was invited as well. Representatives from both the PIFJAs and the NFP had told us they wanted to talk about the case in more detail. Why? Why are we talking about the case? Isn't it going before the Supreme Court? Isn't the Supreme Court going to decide on that? None of us other than Morgana, who sits on the court, has any input. Nia departed Whole Sword first. Peter and I left on our own a little later. Peter was sitting next to me in the presidential car, skimming through the morning newspaper in silence. Suddenly, Serge rolled down the soundproof window.
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, we're about to arrive at the Jen Cultural Center of Culture. Ms. Morgana has already arrived. She will be waiting for you.
Peter raised his head to look out the window. He folded the newspaper and laid it beside him.
Wow, that was too comfortable of a drive to bend this fast.
See, I wasn't joking. Serge is the best.
No kidding, my driver's so fat I can't hold a candle to him.
Peter, you didn't have to shit on your driver.
Although I sure wouldn't mind navigating her dangerous curves one day.
Peter, I'm gonna have to have Lucian kill you. Lucian used to be a former spy. I might have to just one day go to Lucian and be like, take old Yeller style, take Peter out back and just do it, man. Tell him about the rabbits.
Nah, I should ride with you guys more often. I can't believe I could actually read on the go.
Oh, you're embarrassing me, sir. I'm no special man. It's the Kadia.
Serge took a left turn and drove through the tiny streets of Jen. The city looked surprisingly clean and well maintained. There was no sign of the destruction the city suffered during one of the heaviest battles of the Civil War. We slowed down in front of a colorful plaza overlooking a massive concrete building with a giant sign that read Jen Center of Culture.
Looks like the NFP mayors have really transformed the city. Wasn't this an abandoned warehouse for the longest time?
I believe it used to function as a rebel militia base during and a little after the Civil War.
Oh right, the Black Battalion.
It's been a while since I've heard that name.
Sorry to bring it up. May it never be spoken again.
Serge stopped the car and went outside to hold our doors.
Here we are, sirs. I hope you have a great day.
We got out of the car and walked towards the entrance of the building. Every spot around us was decorated with the flags of Sordland. How patriotic. The comically large amount of flags almost fully enveloped the buildings around the plaza in maroon, white, and gold. At the entrance, Kasaro Kimna, the head of the National Front Party, was waiting for us in his iconic turd brown suit, watching the sky. This guy is an asshole and a pain to us all the time. I don't want to have to see him.
And look at this guy, he's so full of himself. How did this clown convince the Pifjas to have trilateral talks with them anyway?
You know, I hate to say it, but he's a dangerously competent man, Peter. The fact he's getting his horribly racist bills through the National Congress, and he only controls a minority, I think it's a 40-vote minority, that meaning that's his entire caucus, we should be cautious with him.
I agree.
Seeing us arrive, Kasaro approached with a smile.
Oh, thank you for being here on this glorious day, Mr. President and Mr. Vice President. As the former mayor of Jen, it is an honor to welcome you to this fine city.
I could say it looks like you were a mayor, maybe you should run again. I feel like that's a backhanded compliment. I could say it's good to be here. I'm just gonna make with the pleasantries. Thank you, Mr. Kibner. We shook hands.
Thanks for organizing this, Mr. Keebner.
The representatives of the Pifjas and Minister Magna are already inside the private meeting room. Hopefully we'll be able to finish this before the festivities start.
I can't imagine we're going to agree to anything in here. Kasaro gestured at the doors behind him.
Shall we?
He's not going to help us on the constitutional changes. You know what? Fuck it, though. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Before we go in, is there any way we can discuss how you can help us with the constitutional changes? There's no way, because I'm not giving an inch on anything. But I'm going to ask.
I'm afraid not. Besides, this is neither the time nor place to have such a conversation.
I understand. I tried.
Of course, I'm not saying nothing can change. The results of today's meeting can still possibly, maybe, influence some of our members, I don't know. But let's go inside now. Please follow me.
We entered the building and walked through a massive conference hall until we approached a door towards the back of the building.
We'll have the meeting here.
Oh no, there's too many people here. Kasaro opened the doors for us and we entered the meeting room. Pifja leader Franz Richter and his deputy Manoli Shuri was already seated at the left side of the... I want to just walk out. There is no way anything good comes of this meeting. Nothing good is going to come of this meeting. As soon as we entered, Nia came to greet us. After showing us our seats, Kasaro sat down next to his deputy, Remus Holstrand.
This is such a meaningful day. Thank you for coming here on behalf of your parties. But despite the festive atmosphere, we and the Pifjas want to raise a few important concerns about the worrying state of affairs in Sordland.
Kasaro stopped for a moment to check his notes.
Very worrying indeed. Mr. Richter and his analysts have been working on an analysis of the blood problem. Oh, as soon as they brought it up, we gave our support without reservations.
What? What? The Pifjas and you have come to a conclusion that agrees on how to deal with the bloods? The blood problem?
Mr.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the analysis is about racism and radicalization in Sordland, and our main topic is the case of Urson versus Sordland. Please don't try to spin it.
Of course, Miss Shu and Mr. Holstrand just want to point out that this analysis was focused mainly on the topics related to the Bluish people.
Why are we discussing this on Victory Day?
It seemed fitting.
You know, I'm gonna just come out and straight it. Hold on, if this meeting is gonna turn into a racist summit, I will leave and take my leave immediately.
No, Mr. President, it won't, hopefully.
Let's get you back on track, ladies and gentlemen.
He gestured at friends.
I want to give word to Mr. Richter to explain the issue.
Thank you all. Our analysis of the current tensions between the Bludish and Sordish population in Sordland displays a worrying picture. As much as I hate to say it, the threat of the Bludish Freedom Front is getting real again. The situation with Ramberg and Wayland is very concerning. The increasing discriminatory actions of the governor of Berkshire are resulting in the radicalization of many young Bludish people. Distressingly, the number of radicals have increased significantly after Wayland's Operation Bear Trap.
I must point out that the recruitment numbers of the BFF have significantly increased with nearest communities.
Yeah, we all know this. Can you get to the... Does anybody get to the point quickly? Peter frantically looked through his papers.
That's correct. The reports show that 39 nearest sanctuaries in Berkshire are now classified as red threats by the authorities. Many priests in the region are also suspected of having ties to the BFF.
The Religious Harmony Bill would have crippled this network they established within our sanctuaries, as the threat of the BFF poses is a direct one. This issue requires direct actions that would bear direct results. I am disappointed by the lack of action by the USP administration.
If you just came here to browbeat me, you're wasting my time. Your bill would have unnecessarily raised already high tensions, dipshit.
You did well by vetoing it, Mr. President.
Our suggestion is to finally enforce the official language of our country, as stated in the Constitution. We are working on a Unified Language Act. It is directly aimed at the breeding grounds of the Bludish Freedom Front.
Oh yeah, because criminals are going to listen. You go tell criminals they can only talk in one language and they're going to fucking all of a sudden only talk in that language? Your idea is stupid.
The police have infiltrated 32 BFF training grounds in remote towns around Berkshire that posed as middle schools. Despite all the evidence, similar schools keep popping up. The so-called activists are constantly blocking Governor Braun's attempts to stop these schools, claiming he is attacking the right to language.
You can't take away the Bludish people's rights to be educated in their own language. This is insanity!
Please read the proposal carefully. It does not take away anyone's rights. It only gives the state a way to control radicalization in these schools and teach Bludish national propaganda.
What, they can't teach it in Sordish? I want to take a rake and just beat all of these people in the face, except for maybe Nia. But that probably hurts my chances of getting the Constitution through.
And according to the Constitution, the language of Sordland is Sordish. If nothing is being done to enforce that, we're breaching the Constitution. This law simply enforces it.
Oh, with all due respect, Mr. Keebner, the bill's not strong enough. The Bludish language should be completely banned. You know people like Ms. Shuey or Ms. Morgman will never even vote for your watered-down bill.
I thought I was coming here for hot dogs and fireworks to celebrate a day of remembrance of the Civil War being over, not to see a bunch of bickering bitchy babies.
Remus!
Cassara repositions himself on the chair and continued.
True, it does not ban the Bludish language or Bludish education. It will instead make Sordish mandatory to learn for everyone living in this country. This will only decrease the tensions in the long term.
Alright, okay. So you're saying everyone has to learn Sordish? Alright, oh, okay. Cassaro, I mean, that isn't necessarily bad. In a country that is majority Sordish, Sordish is the national language, we would be doing children a disservice if they don't learn the national language, as long as they can still learn their own language.
That's a fair point. However, the wording of the bill is far too vague to work as intended. It gives the government too much power over educational institutes.
Alright, friends might have a point.
I disagree. The language is quite clear and is in line with the Constitution, but we can improve it, of course. It is true that it gives more control, but it is a necessary compromise.
I don't... Fuck it. Look, I'd have to read it before I can support it. I'll probably veto it, but I'd have to read it to decide.
The PIFTA will not allow this bill to pass the Assembly. Let's not make statements that the party hasn't agreed on yet.
Oh, Manoli, you just got put in your place. Shit, Manoli looked furious. She opened her mouth to respond, then read the room and closed it again.
Oh, as if the PIF just has the influence to change the outcome.
Remus, you're a lovely darling, aren't you?
If I may continue with our analysis. The situation is also connected to Rumberg, as everybody already knows. In the case of future incursion, BFF forces in Sordland could become an existential threat.
This meeting is becoming an existential threat to my mental welfare. I'm going to try and be polite, even though I don't want to be. With all due respect, Mr. Richter, I already received this information from Internal Affairs. Tell us something we don't know.
Let me finish, Mr. President.
He adjusted his tie and continued.
That makes dealing with the armed militants crucial in the short term. I'll be honest, I myself have underestimated this threat. But judging by the current climate, a spark is all the BFF needs to start violence on a mass scale.
Hey, we got a pretty modernized military, you know, we're probably ready in case.
Our analysis matches with that of the Ministry of Interior. But despite this fact, we believe the Ministry is hiding information from us, which is actively fueling the tension behind the scenes.
Yeah, I would believe Lilius might not tell you everything. Yeah, I believe that.
As much as I now support a strict response against the BFF, it must also be coupled with the expansion of rights for the Blutish people. This is the only way to fight against radicalization.
What do you think my constitution is trying to do?
Oh, what is the BFF propaganda? What rights are we talking about here? What can a sword in Sordland do that a Blood can't? You're using soft, baby, weak language as a cover-up for your willingness to negotiate with terrorists. You're a BFF apologist, Mr. Richter!
Remus shouted the last sentence. Peter tapped on the table to get his attention.
Please don't raise your voice, Mr. Holstron.
The mood in the room had turned sour.
Is the USP that desperate for Mr. Richter's support now?
Melanie bellowed out a loud laugh.
Mr. Vectorn is the last person to sway the PIFJs. And what is that supposed to mean?
Can we return to the topic? I could shout enough. I could be like, this is a mess. I'm here for a proper meeting. Let's just try and be as gentlemanly as we can, because some of these people, we need to still vote for a constitution. Casaro and Peter nodded.
You heard the man. Please finish your point, Mr. Richter.
Wow, Casaro actually stood up for Richter for a second?
Yes, our administration should make all possible opportunities to expand the rights of the Blutish populace while stamping out the BFF militants in parallel. This must be our long-term strategy.
Alright.
However, we require your support with a more pressing matter. This might have a very significant consequences for our brutish citizens and may serve as a dangerous trigger if we're not careful.
Friends gestured at Manoli. She carefully placed several pieces of paper in front of her.
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, and Ms. Minister, as you already know, there's a major Supreme Court case at the moment. Ishvel Urson is suing the governor of Bergia, Felix Braun, for infringing upon civil liberties of the Blutish people and demands the Constitution be revised. Because of the argument and the implications, Felix Braun, and consequently the very Constitution of Sordland, is under trial. The fact is, he needs to be punished and the Constitution must be reviewed.
Do I tell him we're trying to revoke the status of Bergia? Or do I keep it to myself? You know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to tell him. Look, I'm aware of this case. In fact, we're already working on revoking the current special zone status of Bergia. Because sooner or later, we're going to need these guys' votes to do it through Congress.
That's great to hear. We would be very happy if you can share the details once they're more concrete. We will definitely give support to that when the time comes, Mr. President. However, the case of Urshvel-Urson has a bigger reach than Bergia.
Nia raised her hand and spoke.
I was actively involved in this case because of the implications with the Constitution. There is no way the Supreme Court will agree with Urshvel-Urson on all of the points.
Not if all three parties of the Assembly support Urson together. We can put pressure on them, and we only need them to agree on a few of those points.
Richter, what makes you think the damn Supreme Court's gonna give a shit what we think? They're their own separate branch. They're untouchable under the current Constitution. I'm literally gonna ask them that. Why do you think it would influence the court's decision? We have no leverage over them. Not any legal leverage, at least.
This never happened before, Mr. President. They surely cannot ignore us if all three parties are united, and we provide them with our analyses.
Oh, you don't know the court there, friends.
Besides, if the NFP can see the necessity in de-escalation, I'm sure the soulless judges can too.
So you just believe in Hawker and hope for the best? I thought you'd have a better plan than this, friends. Manali glanced at Friends. Her eyes showed her agreement with me. See? Maybe your vice deputy understands that the court has some really corrupt members on it. Alright, what are your plans and suggestions?
In short, the plan is to release a unified statement to the justices, declaring our support for Urson and explaining why this is so important.
Wow, Keebner, I didn't think you'd ever come across on that issue. Supporting something for the Bloods?
The only good result would be if the Supreme Court reiterates its commitment to the pillar of unity and soulism. Mr. President, despite previously being against it, I now completely understand why Sordland needs soulism, why we need unity more than ever. Article 6 is that unity.
We don't need the soulless unity.
Casaro stared Remus down and continued. Both of these parties have fractures within their own membership.
If the court reiterates the definition of sword and Article 6 as an all-encompassing term, they would be acknowledging that Urson and others like him are indeed protected by the rights of sword peoples, which they are.
I agree with you on that, Keebner.
As a result, the resettlement policy in Dire would be reversed, opening the way for Governor Braun's removal and the de-escalation of tensions in Bergia.
I don't see what's wrong with that. I could be like, what about people who don't want to be called a sword? I don't give a shit. We're in Sordland. We're all swords. You can be a bluish sword. Whatever. I don't give a shit about your feelings on that. We're talking about legal status. Is that true, Ms. Morgna?
That is correct, Mr. President.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, why not? Everybody, that's what the thing says.
It could work for the time being, but I believe we can push for a more comprehensive outcome. Exactly. Our current constitution fails to recognize the Bluish people. It is time we abolish the inherent racism in it.
The citizens of Sordland are swords. The Constitution clearly defines that in Article 6. It encompasses everybody. This shouldn't be up for debate.
I hate to agree with Keebner, but he's right. Who gives a fuck, you know?
What racism are you talking about? Soulism is based on civic nationalism, not ethnicity. I do not understand why someone would go against such a broad and inclusive law. I don't see the commies criticizing their identity contanen, when in fact the country is filled with different ethnicities.
I see your point, but I don't understand why the NFP had such a sudden change of heart.
I disagree. This case is important for the greater good of the Swordlish nation. That is what the Nationalist Front stands for. All I'm asking for is, even in United Contana, the Malvani doesn't call himself Covian before Contana. Why is it that Blues cannot do the same? Why does Sordland have to be divided?
You got a point, but I must point out that Contana is the word for a geographic entity, unlike Sword.
Well, why can't Swordish have two different meanings? In fact, who cares?
This is Sordland. You can subscribe to whatever idea you want, but if you are a citizen, you're a sword. This is how nations work.
The reality is the Blues do not respect nor recognize the laws and authority of Sordland. They'd rather separate themselves from swords and protest the very laws that protect them.
All right, man, can we wrap this meeting up? If either you guys come out with a joint statement or not. Enough.
So they can cry about injustice and Sordland's...
I don't care. Wrap it up.
Oh, I can't believe the words being thrown around at this meeting. Oh.
Neither can I. I think it's time we wrap this shit up. Like, are you on the same side or not? Are we going to have a joint statement that is going to try and fix things or not?
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the president. Let's sum it up and arrive at the point quickly. I personally somewhat agree with Mr. Kibner on this. However, our position as the PIFJA is that Article 6 does indeed discriminate against non-swords. And having a positive outcome for this case alone doesn't suffice. We agree to come together in support of Ishval Urson, but we believe our statement should include the acknowledgement of the inherent racism within the Constitution.
How... Did you all just waste my time? Because I'm going to slap some bitches if you did. Y'all should be on the same page before you waste my time.
We must use this opportunity to show the flaws in the Constitution. If the court agrees that there is in fact conflict between the articles, or recognize the discrimination...
And the Hawker Court is going to listen to that?
Look, I don't like Keebner at all. He is my least favorite person in this meeting. And he's talking pragmatism right here. You can't ignore that.
Besides, we do not agree with your inherent racism. Hogwash! You have to state that it's your party's opinion and does not reflect the NFP. We won't take part in that.
That would make the statement look weak and disorganized. If there's no consistent strategy, I don't think it'll work.
Neo, what's the most likely outcome of the case? Are we going to have to do something like this?
The first and most likely option is that the Supreme Court completely ignores the arguments and rejects it in its entirety. If they ignore all the points and strike against arson, Governor Braun will be free to follow his discriminatory policies without any obstacles. And in a future possible case, the court's interpretation of the arson case will be the basis of all future rulings, which opens the way of suspending the rights of non-swords. It would effectively erase any progress that has been made regarding Blutish rights and will embolden anti-Blutish proponents to follow their actions freely.
Man, that sounds like that'd be disastrous for our Blutish citizens if that happened.
Exactly. That is precisely why our expectation is to see a different result this time. The stakes couldn't be higher.
I don't want to ask what the significance of this case is.
I'll be straight with you, Mr. President. If the court rules against arson, this will most likely turn into a BFF campaign for a Blutish revolution. We ask everybody to recognize this. I and the NFP are ready to push for a de-escalation and aid our nation during this dangerous time.
I'll be completely honest, I would have never expected that from you.
Remus was visibly annoyed, but kept himself silent.
Because the case is now in the hands of the Supreme Court, this ruling will influence all future implementation of the law and the decision-making of lower courts.
I feel like this meeting is rather repetitious. We've all said this a million times. Let's make a decision. We all know what's at stake.
We have the Minister of Justice here with us, too. I'm sure she would not disagree with what I just said.
Nia did not comment, but nodded.
I am afraid Mr. Keemner is right about this. If the court ignores the case now, this may turn into something massive. Therefore, we have to preserve the court not to escalate the already high tensions.
All right, buttfuck, are you ready to agree then with a compromise statement? Look, I can ask, I could... The only thing I really could do, I could say we won't be blackmailed by a group of people. We pushed really hard to try and get the Bloods to feel and be enfranchised, so I'm not going to do that. I could say the Supreme Court should make its decision independently. I kind of think that's still an option if we're going to respect the court. I don't know if Nia is wrong about the court, though she could be right. The fact that the other two groups are worried about the court statement does make me think she might be right. So what do you think will happen if the court ignores it? We've already got people's opinion. Do I need that opinion?
Another all-out BFF rebellion, Mr. President.
In my opinion, that would be a preferred outcome. If enemies truly do live within our borders, I'd rather have them show their true faces earlier than later.
This is exactly what those damn rums want. They're readying for war and waiting to use the tensions inside Sordland against us.
Yes, we can't allow that to happen. Are you guys gonna make your damn statement together, or are you blowhards gonna fucking bullshit for another 8 hours?
We definitely can't. Yeah, I think I have enough information to be able to say we're deep in the mud here.
Peter laughed at his own attempt at a joke, but nobody else reacted.
Well, I think the NFP's stance could do some good for the Bludish without provoking the establishment, but even that might be risky right before the vote. But the PIFJ's stance is too radical. I think it will only antagonize the Supreme Court even further and make them give a worse ruling. I think it might be better to keep our administration out of this. I'm not sure if it's worth the risk. Right before the vote for our reforms, we might lose all of our progress, but the decision is yours.
Alright, I heard enough. I heard enough 20 minutes ago. But these assholes had to keep talking. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't. So I could say, we're not going to release the unified statement. We're going to stay out of it. I feel like that's the way to go in one way. The other way is we could agree with the NFP that the Bloods have the right of every other citizen under the law. Or we could agree with Richter and say those articles of the Constitution are bad. I think the reasonable thing, and the one the most likely to have political traction, is to agree with Keebner. The USP will join the statement, will argue that the Bludish people are considered swords before the law, as Keebner suggested. Now, PIFJs, don't back out on this shit.
Oh, that's great to hear. We will get to work immediately after the celebrations.
I don't like the sound of this.
Oh, neither do I, as much as that may be needed. This will only strengthen the soulism of the USP. We all know Sordists don't agree with soulless nationalism. Well, what else do you want me to do? You didn't like the other thing, Remus.
We'll talk about that later, Remus. Sordists will have to listen to me this time.
We will also support the effort for the sake of a positive result.
Thank you, Franz Richter.
We appreciate all your comments, ladies and gentlemen. But now the USP stance is clear, we should probably end the meeting here.
After bidding our farewells, Casaro took us outside the building to join the Victory Day event on the plaza. We'll probably get to do a speech or some shit. Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. Does the news have anything about that? Big Three unites against Governor Braun. Yesterday's Victory Day celebrates a marked historic moment for Sordland's political landscape. All the parties in the Assembly, the USP, the PIFJs, and the NFP released a joint statement demanding the Supreme Court... Oh, couldn't we suggest instead of demand? Remove Governor Braun from office and to serve the justice that is due to Bludish citizens. The parties brought up Article 6 of the Constitution, which defines all citizens as swords, encompassing everyone regardless of ethnicity. That's actually good though, right? Because if the Supreme Court rules the way we don't like, we might be able to do legislation then. Though they might kill it. Governor Braun's policies, including the controversial resettlement order... Oh, we already know all that. The Holstered Post stands with us and agrees with us. What about Sordland today? A missed opportunity for Gassam and Sordland. Oh, they're whining about the fact we didn't invest in Gassam. Fuck Gassam. Gassam was a corporation that treated their citizens like shit. They were incompetently run. That wasn't going to change it. And they were an awful company. A new company will rise and take advantage of the gas and oil fields. And we got rid of one of the oligarchs. You old Alfonso. Fuck him. He's as rich as we are. President Rayne meddles in the judiciary. So Sordland today doesn't like that we're standing with the other parties to stand up for the rights of the Bloods. You know, I don't like the idea of standing for soulless unity, but we gotta stand up for the rights for the people. And what does the radical have to say? Oh, they blame us for standing up for soulism. They're all united for soulism. You would think the radical, if anybody, would try and stand up for the Bloods, but they don't like the way we're doing it. They don't like the Constitution as is, and I'm not a fan of it anyway. But you know what? You can't please everybody. We try to do what was morally right. Next time, we'll check out this other shit. And, oh man, we gotta figure out something with the budget. Thanks for hanging out.